Welcome everybody to the Too High Podcast. I am Seth Galina alongside Diante Lee. Diante, the season's over. It's over.
Man, I won't do it for the sake of your guys' ears, but I want to clap. Very not negatively, right? I mean, obviously there's a certain amount of grind to the season, and you and I kind of joked about some of that, in the playoffs or whatever off air. But I mean, we ended up getting a much better postseason. We got regular season. And then, for the sake of the chat and the sake of our podcast, a lot of the things that we've been talking about, over the course of the year, just all kind of came to fruition, in the postseason in the Super Bowl.
There's obviously a lot of fatigue, and you're seeing all your favorite NFL writers, college football writers, I guess, from like a month ago being like, it's over. I'm going to hibernate for the next 600 years or whatever. I love talking football so much with you that I'm sad there's not going to be new football for the next 8 months to talk about.
Yes, 100%.
I love coming on here, and there was a time when before we had switched to the Too High Podcast, when we were still a PFF college football podcast, when not a lot of people were listening. Our only listeners were in Czech
right, in
Austria. Where I was like, I don't want to do this, man. This is what am I doing this for? And then, I just love doing it. We've talked a lot more, me and you, behind the scenes with some other people and watch film and stuff like that. And I think, unfortunately, like I said, there's no new football for the next 8 months, but I think coming back in 2022 for the 2022 season, I think we're going to be bigger and better. So excited for that. Just to remind the listeners, the lead sponsor for the Too High Podcast is, of course, PFF. From now until February 14th, so you have only a couple hours left if you're listening to this on Monday, you can get 25% off any PFF subscription with the promo code SUPER25. All of PFF's locked article content, NFL, you get NFL Greenline, you get College Greenline, obviously, that's for next season. Player prop tool for next season. But for the offseason, what you get is free agency rankings that are very good, and the NFL draft guide, which is very good. So support the pod, use promo code SUPER25 for 25% off any subscription on PFF.com. Okay, I guess we got to go through the Super Bowl. Your thoughts, your kind of overall thoughts on the game.
I'll swing this back to you so you can do the same, but I'll take it from what I thought in the immediate moments following, and then now that we had an opportunity to kind of watch some of the film. So my immediate thoughts coming out of the game was just that the pressure in the second half was eventually just kind of the deciding factor, especially, after it was a little bit hairy given OBJ's injury and all that. So it kind of felt like, man, Aaron Donald and, Von Miller kind of helped them escape with one. And I do think that there's a piece of that. But after, taking a sitting down and really watching through it, I actually came away from it very kind of pleased and impressed outside of the early down runs with the Rams' game plan. I thought that they approached this basically the way that I expected, on offense and defense, outside of some of those just awful first down handoffs to Akers and Michelle in particular. My big takeaway was that they actually had a really good plan. I thought they adjusted really well for what the Bengals tried to do, especially on the offensive end in terms of neutralizing Donald and Miller. I thought that they had some really nice adjustments off of that. I think that this is a game that came down to end up being a 3-point margin, but I actually think the Rams probably on a play-by-play basis had more wins, and the Bengals did what they've been doing all year, which is enough high variance plays for them to stay, in reach. Is that kind of how you walked away from the game, or what was your immediate takeaway versus today?
I was about ready to write the at halftime of the football game. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna write the Hakeem Adeniji is a Super Bowl MVP piece on PFF.com.
Right.
Oh my God, they're doing just enough, and the running game was okay. And I actually thought the running game was pretty good throughout the whole game on the Bengals offense. And I was like, Vaughn's not really getting much. OBJ had gone out. Tyler Higbee wasn't playing, and you were like, they could keep it close. And if the offensive line just stays just in a neutralizing type of, they don't have to be winning, like dominating their one-on-ones, but if they're not losing like crazy, but that didn't happen.
Right.
That just didn't happen. And honestly, it was never going to happen because Aaron Donald's the best player that's ever played football. So that's really what it comes to. Like he's just the best player ever. Like he just doesn't lose a lot of one-on-ones. And you saw what upgrading Terrell Lewis as your edge rusher to Von Miller has amounted to as the season has gone on. And he's just, and again, bad offensive line, but he was cooking. Isaiah Prince, I can't believe it. It's disgusting.
It's nasty.
Yeah,
that's what, like, especially in the second half, like once they realized how the Bengals were trying to set their protections to try to keep Donald out of the picture and the way they were manipulating off of it. Like there were just some plays where you're just watching Diante and Prince and you're like, I don't know what you're gonna do with this, man. So yeah, like those guys are on fire in the second half. Obviously, the story on the offensive end is what Staff and Cup were able to do in the fourth quarter, particularly in that go-ahead drive, right? Like being able to find that connection again, not having the vertical threats. And this is something we'll get into, right? Like the Rams' approach was to be vertical in this football game, which makes it understandable for me from a coaching perspective why they were trying to run the ball early, right? If the idea in the passing game is that you're going for chunks, you want something to be a control in terms of game flow and game situation. It was just, they were just so bad up front. Like the Bengals, to give them some credit, absolutely demolished them between the tackles. You got a lot of run-throughs. DJ and BJ were absolutely dominant over guards throughout the game. And that really made it difficult for the Rams. But the one thing that was pretty evident is that they felt like they could take their vertical shots. I thought they did a decent job of it throughout the game. And then a lot of it was just like running out of bodies once Odell was hurt. That's where you really felt like, damn, they kind of missed Robert Woods to work those intermediate areas with Cup, But I thought that they managed it well after, some of the dumb turnover luck, I think, kind of evened itself back out.
Yeah, well, let's stick on the Rams offense before we'll do one side of the ball at a time. And I agree 100%. I thought they tried to get vertical, and I thought that the Bengals did a really good job of snuffing out some of the vertical stuff. They really did. I mean, there wasn't a lot of open space. Remember early in the game, he maybe, Stafford is kind of waiting for Jefferson to hit a post because they're going to try and get the safety up in a quarters look. Doesn't really have time, has to check it down. I thought there was a really good job, whether they were playing their, one robber stuff, they're playing their cover 2, cover 4 stuff. I thought they did a really good job against all the play actions that, and then they run a ton of play actions, whether it was play action, take a deep shot, or, one of the things that the Rams have started to do this year, which is like go empty to take a deep shot and putting the tight end and the running back as like 6th and 7th pass protectors, but out of an empty look. But really, it's an ability to take a deep shot without play action.
Right.
And the Bengals did a really good job. And like you said, like the verticality meant you didn't see their stick concepts a lot. I think they threw one maybe on the last drive or two.
Not a ton of the arches stuff that we talked about last week.
0 arches, I don't believe.
Yeah.
So like it was really just like their basic intermediate and deep stuff that they were running a lot of, and the Bengals did a really good job. And of course, like you said, you're going to run the ball for 1.4 yards per carry or whatever. I don't have the exact number. 0% success rate. Like you're going to put yourself in these situations when maybe you could have called your stick on first down. There's your 6 yards.
Right.
The one thing, my question about McVay to you, because I'm pushing back against him being, his game management is bad. It's not great. It's never been great. His game management, taking timeouts, maybe running the football too much, not going forward on fourth down, and all that stuff is super important. Like, and I've said this before on the podcast. Like in a sport where, in a league where there's so much parity and so many tight games, like you need to be able to be good at that stuff. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? It's important. This isn't high school football. This isn't college football where there's 20-point depth margins all the time, right? Where you can just, out scheme someone or whatever. But I don't like that we've boiled down head coaching to fourth down decisions.
Right.
So I'm like, so
and
just
expose
pushing
like
back against.
we
Go
have
ahead, man.
turned no, I was just saying we turned offensive play calling into like fourth down decisions and explosive passes almost exclusively now,
Yeah.
which I understand, right? Because these are the two things that like just very viscerally you
Yes.
can see the analysis on it is very simple, and I know that there's a lot of nuance within the sport that not everybody has access to the resources in order to talk about it. I think in the most articulate and educated manner, and it's no shot to anybody for it. That just kind of is what it is, right? Like not everybody has access to like all 22 film, especially at the speed that somebody in our position does, right, at PFF. And then number two, you've got to be equipped with whatever amount of information that is required in order to speak about it in a way that contextualizes the whole picture. We were talking about it with some of our football pals. I think one of the first things I said to everybody was like, can we all take a deep breath? Like we were within like the first 15 to 20 snaps, and everybody's like, well, they're doing too much of this, they're doing too much of that, they're doing too much of this, they're not doing enough of that. And I'm like, there is like this information gathering phase that has to happen in a football game, especially one of this magnitude when your opponent gets 2 weeks basically to prep for you. So yeah, I do like it does make for some regrettable conversations, I think, from a football perspective.
Yeah.
Like particularly for McVay, who has kind of had to deal with this on every extreme of the spectrum, where he's been like the boy genius play caller guy to being the you shrunk in the big moment because of the Super Bowl in 2018, to now and some of the ups and downs that we saw throughout this season and this postseason and the Super Bowl specifically. I think that if we're judging him on what I believe to be the most important thing in coaching, which is your adjustments, not necessarily like your opening script or, what you do when everything is on schedule. But if you take what happened in the moments from when Odell got hurt, which clearly unraveled everything that they had planned for this game, versus what happened in the second half, especially from like the second half of the third quarter through the fourth, I thought that it was a great job of adjusting for the most part with some of the things that they needed to do. I thought that once they brought their passing game back down to the short and intermediate level, all of a sudden you see like, okay, they refound their connection with Cooper Kupp. You started using him in some different ways. They were able to protect staff, I thought, excellently, especially in the second half. They kept him clean. Aside from that little tip ball interception, there was a little bit of pressure on that from what I remember. Like, he just did a really good job, not just conceptually, but just understanding the flow of the game and what was required in the second half. And that's why they were able to move the football, get ahead, and then ultimately win the game.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. You can't tell me he's a. I saw a bad tweet. I mean, I should be like giving giving pub to bad tweets here, but like I did see a bad tweet that he's like a bad coach and a coward or whatever, and it's like the guy, his record speaks for itself, and just the fact that he's been to 2 Super Bowls and now he's won one. I mean, like that again, it speaks for itself. He's obviously a very good coach, and again, I do think those other things matter. But though I will say the one thing about fourth down decisions is that we do get up in arms about like, all these things are based on like win probability, and like we're talking about like, they punted and they lost 3.7% win probability, and it's like,
right.
Again, I don't want to minimize that and saying like it's not important, and again, it's your job to do that and do it well, but we are talking about 3.7% here. You know what I mean? Like there's rarely, when you look at all these like bots that tweet out stuff, whether it's ours or Ben Baldwin or ESPN's or whatever, like there's very rarely a situation where someone punts instead of going for it, and it's like this was a 27% swing. It's like,
right,
it's very tiny margins here.
100%.
But yeah, I mean the running the football stuff, welcome to NFL coaching. It's not good. We slowly make way every year, and
right.
The pass rate does go up every year. So whatever.
100.
Yeah. Anything else from the Rams' offensive perspective that was interesting? Maybe about Odell. Like this was going to be Odell's game.
Yes, that was going to be my big thing. I think that the design of this really wasn't about Cooper Kupp at all walking into the game. Not that he was going to be a decoy, but I think that the setup for the Rams was actually going to be built on Odell as an unguardable one-on-one piece to open everything else up for the offense. Like that to me, I think was the the ultimate plan, and I think you could see that by some of the success that they had in the first half, right? Like the touchdown to Odell was on a double post wheel concept, so it's basically just like switch vertical. So you're running four verts, but it's something like planning to put Odell in the slot, which is
Yeah.
something that they didn't do a whole ton of throughout the postseason. But getting into those situations where it's like, hey, the goal here is to get single high zone coverage. Oh, well, once we see that, we know where we want to pick on them, how we want to set things up and design it. I thought that that was kind of the game plan for McVay, and he kind of hinted at it. I think there was a lot of kind of like, confusion when he said the word regulated, but what he's ultimately getting at is what I think they wanted to do with Odell, which is get them into vanilla looks. And you saw a little bit of tempo in the first half from them that they came back to late in the game once they figured out what they wanted. You didn't see a whole lot of motion, I thought, on their passing plays because, again, I think that the approach was, hey, let's get this picture. We just want to see if we get the look, and if we get the look we want, we're going to work the easiest matchup possible. And when once he was gone, and now you're back to your progression passes, that's where you see Cincinnati giving them a lot of trouble in that second and third quarter periods, where you see Staff trying to work his way through progressions, and there's a lot of traffic on a lot of these passes, and it's hard to find out who he wants. I thought that he made some good decisions with like slot fade throws to Van Jefferson. I just think that those throws were originally designed to go to Odell. And that's the difference between Van Jefferson and Odell Beckham is he probably comes down with one or two of those slot fades that go incomplete. And that I think was a big deal in them kind of losing their handle on the game flow as Cincinnati was getting some of their explosive offense off in those second and third quarters.
Another one to bring up is the comeback. They tried to run a comeback to Skoranek.
Yeah.
That's Odell Beckham's route. Sorry,
That's an Odell Beckham
sorry,
play.
Ben Skoranek.
Yeah.
That's Odell Beckham's route, and you saw the difference in him trying to get separation on that versus what Odell had been doing in his time, in his career, basically.
Right.
The other thing, so yeah, 100%. I think this was a game where, and that they wanted to get Odell touches early. I thought that the Bengals did a very good job of disrupting Kupp, with some physicality. Even if they're playing zone or whatever, just disrupting him with some physicality and not letting him get into the routes that he wants to run. And then the next person that I thought they really felt good about in their game plan was Darrell Henderson in the passing game.
Yeah.
And, you saw one kind of like the Odell Beckham touchdown on some sort of like a pick wheel type of situation where they threw him on the back shoulder. He made a nice play, but they tried to get him the ball a lot down the field. They said, hey, we're gonna split you out. We're going to get the matchup we like versus a linebacker. And he, Logan Wilson, he ran kind of like a slant and go late in the game. And Logan Wilson played it beautifully from off coverage. And yeah, there was some plays there where I think that was part of their game plan a lot, was saying, hey, we're going to split this guy out. We're going to get the matchup that we think we like, and we're going to use it to our advantage. And they couldn't. And I get that. It just didn't work in this game. So now you're no Odell. Henderson's not creating these chunk plays that you're hoping for, and no Tyler Higbee.
You're out of options, right? Like,
it's just out of options, man.
Yeah.
There's just not much left, and then the running game's not working.
Exactly, and now that just exacerbates what you don't have in the run game, right? Like that was the issue to me.
All right, let's move over to the Bengals offense. Obviously, probably the most important thing to talk about here. I think with Burrow, obviously, I'm in super coat mode, but he wasn't great. We went through the tape together, and we found quite a few examples where we're just like, man, got to make a play here. Got to make a play here. But then the cope is really just saying, like, if you had dealt with what he had dealt with this playoff run and for most of the regular season with his offensive line, and now you're playing against these guys and they're starting to heat up, it's like, I get why you're not waiting around. There were some plays to be made, and he didn't make them. Made a couple plays. Obviously, we talked about only 7% of their dropbacks were play action dropbacks. I don't believe any of them were from under center. So every time they went under center, they ran the football.
Right.
Now, you made a point, and I'll let you explain why you thought that this was just not – it was just not going to be part – it's barely part of their game plan anyways, but I felt like, okay, maybe you could just get some explosive plays because of that. And they really only ran one type of, play action concept to get yards. So I'm going to let you explain what you told me before.
So to me, like, I think a lot of this just comes down to the interplay, and it's something that I was kind of borrowing from a point that you had made. I want to say we talked about it on the podcast, and we certainly had conversations about it off air, which is just like what happens when Ashawn Robinson's on the field, right? Like, and how you have to respond to that. So one of the things that comes up with the Bengals is like, because they have such a heavy tendency when they actually really want to run the football in terms of getting under center, you play with 2 tight ends and you're running outside zone, right? Like, that's their big thing. Well, if you do that, when you bring a big body onto the field, they're going to bring their bigger body and Ashawn Robinson on. So now you're probably losing those matchups on the interior. And I still thought that they created a decent amount in the run game off of it. But then you get into these situations where when you're trying to hand this stuff off and it's getting stuffed, right? And now you're off the game script and now you're allowing their pass rush to get after you. So what the Bengals tried to do throughout the game, especially like second and third quarter, was they would bring in like 6 offensive linemen. So now it's not really 13 personnel, but you almost have to treat it like that because it's a 6 offensive linemen. Well, when you do that, you're going to get more downhill in the run game, but now you're just leaving yourself one receiver threat, right? Like, so the trade-off, right? It's all out of balance. And you don't, again, still dealing with this pass rush, you don't want to be in 13 personnel and running these deep pocket play actions against this pass rush. And I also think that for them, they were probably looking at the games that San Francisco played against the Rams. And one of the issues that we saw with Jimmy Garoppolo, and something that I pointed out, was like the reason why the 49ers are kind of cobbling together offense, even when they're successful against the Rams in the regular season and the postseason, is because their play action game is basically a non-starter. Because setting up these deep pockets against this pass rush means that it's really hard to protect these guys because you're not getting depth in your pass sets, right? You're selling run. Well, if it's Aaron Donald and you're trying to step to him and now he works his arm over or he backdoors you and it's actually a deep pocket play action, you're not blocking this guy. The running back's not there to help you because he's selling the run. He's at the line of scrimmage, probably on the opposite end of Aaron Donald or Von Miller, right? And even if he's on their side, he can only pick up one of the two. And now you're still in the same situation where you're going to have a lot of pressure in your face. So I think that, again, that kind of gets to the disjointed nature, not only of Cincinnati's offense in general and the way that they had it set up, but in the context of this game specifically, and why I think there was a lot of things that worked for them on offense that they couldn't really stick with because it was difficult to actually control what was happening in the trenches off of some of the stuff, even when it was working.
Yeah, no, it was. So yeah, I mean, it's always like hindsight is 2020, and you're like, you never know. But I'm just like, hey, they could have called a couple more play actions, like just try it out, but and just wad it up. I will say the one thing they did do that I liked was they did, and kind of in the same way I'm talking about with the Rams trying to get shots, like deep shots without play action, like a 7-man protection, deep shots without play action, and something that the Bengals have done in the past, and certainly something that Joe Burrow did at LSU, which was 7-man protection, not necessarily play action, but 7-man protection. Slot receiver Tyler Boyd running down the middle of the field, and then you have 2 mirrored routes, deep routes on the outside between T. Higgins and Chase, and they hit a couple big plays on that. I mean, one was an offensive PI for sure, but like besides that, it was they hit some big plays. So I got to give them credit for that, like doing it that way, so that Burrow doesn't have to turn his back. Right, this is basically what you're talking about. Is, if you go from under center, he's got to turn his back, and he's really got to turn get his eyes back down the field, and then guess what? Aaron Donald's already in your face. So at least you have that capability, and they did that quite a bit. Probably more than in this game than they had in some of the other playoff games. I think at least all of them, not combined, but I think individual. I think they did it more. So that was good. I like that. I thought that the quick game stuff was needed. I think that a point that I glossed over when we talked about those five-man fronts, Gaines, Ashawn Robinson, Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, and Von Miller was, we liked it when they would send 5 and you can get the ball off quick, and that happened a couple times.
Right.
But one of the things that I glossed over was really, okay, well, they're going to drop either Von Miller or Leonard Floyd. And we talked about the stat on last week's show that Von Miller had dropped the coverage 50 times this season, just since becoming a Los Angeles Ram, right? Which was so much more than he'd ever done as a Bronco. So the issue is, like, yeah, it's not like you're living in a world, like, I always think about it offensively, and I'm like, hey, we can attack that. Like, if we know who's dropping, we can attack that player. He's not getting coverage. But one of the issues was the Rams did a good job, and I don't know the keys here, but it seems like the Rams did a good job of not showing who was going to drop, like which side, whether it was Floyd or Vaughn was going to drop. And the pressure was just too much to figure out. Like, for Burrow to say, like, okay, I can drop, I can figure this out, who's dropped here, and then I can make a decision and work maybe that side of the field or away from it, whatever the game plan is. They just didn't have time. So now you're getting into situations where I think you'd like it on paper, but again, like, just this whole Rams D-line versus Bengals O-line just kills everything.
Yeah, I mean, and this is also particularly with what you're talking about with these 5 down fronts. When you add what you're saying in, you have to be aware of which guy is dropping into coverage and which guy is coming off the edge. Then when you walk up a backer over the guard and you add that to the equation for what Cincinnati wanted to do, which is basically slide the protection to Aaron Donald no matter what the front set was. Now you run into these dangers, and you saw a lot of it in the second half where the linebacker that's walked up over the guard isn't picked up by the guard that he's walked over because he's sliding to Donald, meaning now that you have this linebacker on the back, which if you're the Rams is beautiful because now you're getting multiple things. You get the back in protection, not out in the route. So now you have an advantage in coverage for that. You're not going to have to pull another guy out of coverage to deal with the back. That's number one. Number two, for them, even as you're sliding now, the contour of the pocket is getting worked by the way that you have to move it in order to pick up Donald and Miller or Floyd, whoever's coming off the edge. And then something that I thought was like really astute by Raheem Morris is he started running these twist games off the edge where now you can get Floyd and Miller in particular twisting inside, and now you're getting your best edge rushers on these guards. So the ways that they're trying to hide them, their weakness up front on Aaron Donald, now you're starting to find ways to manipulate it where Aaron Donald, this is such a subtle thing and a big football nerd thing, but he's probably the best penetrator pick guy on twist games in the NFL because you have to honor him as a true rusher, and he has like real rush power. So he's able to take these guys 2-3 yards into the backfield and create these clean pictures. And for a guy like Von Miller, who was like a 4-5 guy coming into the league and has maybe the greatest bend and change of direction that we've ever seen on the edge, now he's got a two-way go on this poor guard who was already bad and now has to pick him up with this runway on the way to the quarterback. And that's why you saw a lot of these pockets just absolutely get crushed on Burrow in a way where when we're watching, and saying like, maybe he needs to work here or he needed to work here, it's hard to do that if you've got a tackle on your back, right? And you're trying to climb and you've got all this trash on the inside. And that was something that they were really able to do to create a lot of problems for Burrow in the pocket. And I thought that was great. Some of this is obviously helped by the fact that Burrow kind of pretty clearly hurt his knee, in the second half, on one of those sacks. But I thought they did a great job of keeping Burrow away from what he wanted to do most, which is escape to his right and then create offense, outside of structure.
Yeah, no, I think that is 100% what happened. And it just kind of sucks that this, what we said it was going to happen happened. And it wasn't some deep unbelievable technical football thing. It was, they lost in the trenches, bad. Like
Very
we said,
simple.
they were going to lose.
Got their asses kicked.
And I think there was a lot of, and again, like I remember there's a dagger concept that he could have hit T. Higgins on. He misses Jamar Chase. He underthrows Jamar Chase on the comeback. Like, some plays there for sure, but at the end of the day, like, and let's talk about that 4th and 1 call, because that is I think the 4th-and-1 call that lost them the football game is this whole game in a nutshell. Okay, so they're running slant flat. So the two outside receivers are running slants. The inside receiver to the chip side is running a flat. The third inside receiver, Tyler Boyd, is running like a little hook over the ball, and the running back is running the flat to the other side. So it's a mirrored concept, right? You have slant flat on both sides, and you have in the middle, you have the over the ball route. And when Jalen Ramsey to the one receiver side presses Jamar Chase, most teams will cancel that slant route and it converts automatically to a go route, which is, I'm pretty sure, what happened on this play. And on 4th-and-1, like, you just aren't going to take that route if you're Joe Burrow. It's just, you do not want to live in a world where you're not reading out a concept on 4th-and-1. Period. Like, sorry. And maybe he throws it and maybe they get a completion, but you are not reading that out. That's just not in the quarterback handbook. That's right. I don't know what else to tell you. So now Ramsey being able to say, hey, I can eliminate one person right here. And, watching the film and looking at the safeties throughout the game, they were able to stay low. Mm-hmm. Like, we're talking about middle of the field safety, and he's almost playing like a cheat safety, like, super low, looking at routes that are coming, from the middle of the field. He's not a post safety. He has no chance to give help on a deep route. So, and then when they played, any type of too high, that safety was just like eyes inside. Like, I don't have to worry about, when Chase is I don't have to worry about Chase when he's one-on-one with Ramsey. Not that he didn't win one of them with a fucking great catch, and he burned him, no doubt. But, like, I don't have to worry about that. Like, we will take that one-on-one. And so now 4th-and-1, Ramsey has eliminated Chase from the progression. That's it. He's out. And what they were able to do was really double team someone else. And in this play, it ends up being, it's not a true double team, but it ends up being Tyler Boyd, which is where Burrow wants to go to the football right away. He's number one read on that over the ball route. And because it was 4th-and-1, you're probably getting quick game because they had shown this concept a lot. Now Burrow has to go to a second read, which is basically T. Higgins on the slant. And the corner says, hey, I'm jumping this all day. I know you're not going to have time for a double move, for anything else. The second I see T. Higgins put his foot in the ground for a slant, I'm jumping it. Yep. And then even the third member of this unit, I forget who the nickel is there, saying, oh, I'm kind of feeling a slant behind my head. I'm not going to run with this flat route. I'm just going to sit here in the window, and I'm going to force Joe Burrow to go basically to his third read because I know I have the best defender in the history of football who is going to get to him. And that's exactly what happened. Like, it was just it was kind of the perfect consummation of what we saw throughout the whole game, which is Ramsey being able to go one-on-one and them able to kick everything else to the front side of the concept.
Okay, so I think that the 4th-and-1 thing is actually probably a microcosm of just like some greater things that are happening in the game, right? And ultimately, I think that, the screen grabs that you see, I think that those all do a really good job of capturing something in one particular moment. But, and this is something that I clipped up together and put up, on Monday, if you haven't seen that already, about how Ramsey played throughout the game. But for you, do you think that Ramsey did enough to really take Burrow off of Chase in the way that he kind of came off of him throughout the game? Or were there other shots for you that he should have or could have taken that frustrated you at any point throughout the game?
I think there were a couple. I know we talked about a few of them. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. There was definitely a couple. And I think it is one of those situations that we talked about last week, which was like, yes, he's in good coverage and you kind of just have to take the shot here. And you see what happened when they did it, once. They tried to do it on the last drive, like on the second down. Like second and short, and that didn't work out. And Burrow, Chase thought it was going to go back shoulder, and Burrow threw it over the top. But I don't know. It was tough because, like, They had their opportunities in the one-on-one game. The safeties were not helping at all. I don't know. It's like it's weird. Ramsey could have come down with a pick and then changes, and then you don't do that anymore either. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I looked at it was like I think there was maybe 3 or 4 opportunities that he didn't take to Chase where had he thrown it, I wouldn't have hated it. I don't think that it would have necessarily netted some big completion, but I thought that you could definitely argue that it would have been the right decision if he had taken some one-on-ones. Like I know in particular there was one in the red zone on a drive that I think ended in a field goal for them where they had a one-on-one at the top, at the top of the field with like a fade route where Chase had maybe like a quarter of a step on Ramsey, and in one of those situations you probably want to take that chance. But for the most part, I thought that Ramsey did everything he said that he was going to do as a single against a single receiver, whether it was Chase, whether it was Higgins, and things like that. And then obviously the pass rush then because of that adds another layer in terms of the defense. And I just don't think that the Bengals had an adjustment that they needed off of it, right? And we talked about this. I have more frustration with Zach Taylor, and Brian Callahan, as offensive play callers than I do, anything with Burrow and Chase or whatever, because I thought that there just weren't enough looks late in the game to see if you could peel Ramsey off of Chase or just manipulate what they were trying to do defensively. Like early in the game, I thought they did a good job of motion, trying to declare a new number one receiver. So taking a slot receiver or an outside receiver from the opposite side, motion them all the way across to the outside, see if you can get some kind of exchange. They had an opportunity to convert a 4th and 1 early in the game off of that because there was some confusion. But I think as the game went on, and especially as the pressure started getting greater, I thought that, it's not necessarily that they kind of froze up situationally. I just thought that they came off of some adjustments. I thought that they did a good job, their best job, when they had Higgins and Chase on the same side, particularly when they were inside. Like, I think that a smart move would have been to use Tyler Boyd as an X and waste him, or CJ Uzomah as an X and waste him when Ramsey is outside and force him to make decisions about how you're going to cover on the interior. Because I thought they did a really good job of manipulating their inside defenders. There just wasn't enough of that. And, it's easy to say a lot of this is kind of, Monday morning quarterbacking, literally, in a lot of ways. But I do think that there was a little bit left on the bone for Cincinnati offensively. And I think that because of that, it opened the door for them to give up that much more pressure in the second half, without getting guys working open.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Too High podcast is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern helps advance your money moves. Buying your first home, planning to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow, Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Team up to understand needs and address goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. Too High Podcast, also sponsored by Manscaped. Roses are red, violets are blue. Don't let a wild pube wreck you. Again, if you're listening to this on Monday afternoon, you still have time to either find a Valentine's Day date. I, for example, do not have to find a Valentine's Day date because I'm going out with my mom tonight. It's her birthday. Her birthday is actually February 14th.
Oh, happy birthday.
Valentine's Day is tonight, just around the corner, and our sponsors at Manscaped are here for you with the best tools to get your skin ready for the special occasion. I do not like that I transitioned dinner with my mom into the Manscaped ad.
I didn't even think about that, but that's so awful.
This Valentine's Day, it's time to join the 4 million people worldwide who trust Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming, with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com and use promo code PFF for 20% off and free shipping. The holidays went by so quickly. Did you remember to take care of your package with the best tools for the job? The Performance Package 4.0 from Manscaped is just the thing every person needs in their life to make each day special, and especially tonight, Valentine's Day. Get 20% off and free shipping with promo code PFF at manscaped.com. 20% off free shipping at manscaped.com with the use promo code PFF. Join Cupid and shoot your arrow with Manscaped this Valentine's Day season. Okay, Super Bowl's done. Um, Season's over, but let's spin this forward to next season with these two teams. Let's start with the Rams, Super Bowl champions. How are we feeling about them going into 2022? Obviously, who they decide to keep around is going to be super important. They're going to have to trim some of the fat. Something they kind of already have. You know, they lost John Johnson, they lost Troy Hill last season. Going to have to do it some more. Maybe they lose Aaron Donald. Like, who knows? So yeah, just your thoughts on general thoughts on the Rams going forward.
I mean, I can give you a much clearer answer once we find out what 99's decision is on whether or not he wants to continue playing football. I don't have any inside information on it, but at least listening to the way that he was talking, that didn't really sound like a guy who's pressed to play any more football. I think he meant it when he said that this was the only thing that he had left to check off, on his resume. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's finished. If he leaves, and there is going to have to be, I think no matter what, whether he's there or not, I think that there was maybe a little bit too much talk about this being a stars and scrubs roster. I actually think it was a little bit better than that. I think it kind of turned out to end the season that way because Woods was hurting and OBJ got hurt, especially on the offensive end, and no Higbee. So they were kind of down to twos across the board outside of Cup. So I think that next year is going to be a legitimate stars and scrub roster, no matter what happens with Donald. I think if he's not there, I think that the move is obviously to do whatever you can to retain Odell, because I really want to see what this receiving core looks like when Woods and him are healthy, because that feels sickening.
Perfect. It's perfect.
In terms
the
of
roles that they play,
yeah,
perfect for each other.
Yeah, I can't imagine trying to defend that. That sounds awful and disgusting. But I think that they're still in a strong position, to contend. Obviously, the issue for them is just that you're going to be playing still in the nastiest division in football, right? So and we know that Super Bowl teams typically suffer regression in general, even when you don't make any major roster moves. So they're not going to have a first round pick, We'll see what they have to do with this money situation, because things are going to start racking up for them the longer that they want to contend like this. But I do still expect them to be, at worst, a wild card round team, same as they were this year. It just might not be 12, 13 wins. It might be closer to 9 or 10. And then from there, it's just going to be, can Matthew Stafford be as good against man coverage, against the blitz, against, in fourth quarter situations and things like that, as he was this past year. Are you in the same boat, or do you think that there's a bigger step back for them coming?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we're going to talk about is Sean McVay. Is he going to be around?
Right.
So that is obviously important going forward. I think, the high end is saying, okay, well, we just did this with Stafford in his first year in the system. And if we grow together and the offense, Whitworth too, man, it could look very differently going forward with this team. If with the tackle is gone too. So that would be the low end. Just the low end is like the Saints this year with a quarterback, right? Like you said, stars and scrubs type of lineup, because I think they could still keep around some players. And the high end is saying hey, Matt Stafford will be even better in his second year in the system. And there won't be this Jared Goff drop off from 2018 to 2019 to 2020, like there was for the past two seasons prior for the Rams. That just won't happen. I don't know. It's funny to I think there's a lot of Matt Stafford plays that are hard to chart. Let's say, put it that way, and then don't get the credit they deserve. Like his big throw to Cup, right? The no-look pass to Cup and stuff like that, and all the backside digs and stuff like that. But so I've kind of become this become Stafford guy this season. But at the end of the day, he still is Matt Stafford because of external factors. But at the end of the day, he's still Matt Stafford. So they finally got the Matt Stafford season. You surround him with just insane talent, and he just makes plays for you. And like you said, in these really high leverage situations, whether it's just the playoff, which he's been great at, or against the blitz or against man coverage and all that stuff. So but maybe he just goes back to being Stafford and he throws a couple more interceptions. Because we didn't even talk about the Jesse Bates interception, but that's been his interceptions, his turnover worthy plays this year have been like these deep throws that have basically become arm punts. You know what I mean? Like his turnover worthy plays have not been that like underneath 20 in terms of them being his own fault. Obviously, you have the Ben Skoranek one where he tips the ball up in the air. That's not really his fault, but you don't see a lot of those plays. But maybe those plays start coming back. So I don't know. That would be my the low end there. If Stafford, if they they have to get rid of all these players and Stafford is just okay. But like I said, high end is the Saints with a real quarterback. And honestly, like the Saints went in 9-8 this year.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and I think the defense, obviously Donald not being there really changes things a lot. But the defense, if it could stay average like it was this year, do I expect to go back to number one in the league like it was 2 years ago? No, but if it stays average, then maybe get something out of it. But I still think this is I don't know if they're the team to beat. But then again, honestly, dude, like Brady's
I was going to
out.
say, if you look at the rest of the NFC, like until I know exactly what's going on with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, I don't have any reason to think that somebody should be standing out in front of them in the NFC.
It's just the Packers. It's the Packers. Russell Wilson had the finger injury. He was good in the first 5 games in the season, and the finger injury happens, and then he's fallen off.
Right, the Cowboys are.
He's 34 also. Russell's 34.
Right. Yeah, the Cowboys are up in the air with what they want to do with Amari Cooper because he costs a lot. I mean, that team, not just him, that team costs a lot right now, and they've got young guys that I think are going to be looking to get paid in the near future too. So, like, they're going to have to make some decisions. I don't exactly know what that's going to change for them. And they were also a very high variance team when they were good this past year. So if any of that, especially their turnover luck, regresses to the mean, I don't expect them to be the same level of team, even though they can be in this conversation in 2. And then, I don't know what Trey Lance is going to be. I know I like him, but I don't know what he's going to be for San Francisco. There's enough in the air for me in the NFC that right now I'm still comfortable saying, even with them taking a half step back, which is what I'd expect for a team that played in a February, and that is an expensive team that played in a February, they're still going to be at worst in the tier 1 cluster in the NFC. Probably in the NFL overall.
But they did it. That's really the main thing. It's like they did it. They won the Super Bowl. That is the goal. And of every team is to win the Super Bowl, and they did it. They built this roster out of stars who all came to play. It's too bad about Odell Beckham, but he had kind of started clicking with Stafford, and it would have been a big game. I know it would have been a big game for him if he would have stayed healthy. All right, let's flip to the other side. Cincinnati Bengals. This gives me a little more pause talking about them going forward. This was the year to do it. They were so close. The problem is, I don't know. The Chiefs, it's funny. The Chiefs are their best kind of blueprint to go forward, and it's redo the whole offensive line and hope to God it works it works with the Chiefs. But there's no guarantee, man.
And that's hard, right? Because
the Chiefs got so lucky, dude. Hitting on Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, oh my God.
I was going to say their rookie center might be one of the 5 best centers in the NFL already. And then Trey Smith is just an enormously effective guard, both in the run game and in pass protection. And even the guys that are around them all produced pretty well. I don't know if they were as good as even maybe our grades had suggested, but they were certainly good enough to kind of get the ship back righted once Mahomes stopped with the dumb turnovers, and they kind of figured out what they needed to do offensively in the second half of the year. And it's not just them. To your point of this being the year, this might be the last opportunity you get where your road to the Super Bowl for the Bengals does not involve 2 of Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen.
Yeah.
That's Justin Herbert.
I dislike Steven Ruiz a lot, but you gotta add Justin Herbert into this.
And Justin Herbert. I think that every playoff run, and that's not just for the Bengals, this is for all of these quarterbacks. This is probably the last season where getting to the Super Bowl does not mean that you have to go through 2 of these level of guys. So I can't guarantee anything under that context. And again, to your point, like their defense wasn't much of anything throughout the year. They basically hung around that kind of mid rank. Like,
Yeah,
and if they
which
can
is where they were in
sustain that,
2020, both 2
right?
years under
If you can sustain that, it's not a
Amaretto.
bad thing. Yeah, like it's not a
Yeah,
bad thing if you can sustain that.
yeah,
I'm not mad at that. And I
no,
don't expect them to be able to make up whatever ground is left in terms of DB talent to get from mid tier to top 10, top 12 ish. So if that's where you stay at now, it is just a matter of can you hit on some kind of offensive line picks? Can you go get one vet maybe that
yeah.
can help you on, especially on the interior? Like you
You
can
know,
address,
Riley Reef hadn't played in
and he
whatever
helps.
10 weeks. He helps for
He
sure.
helps. He helps a lot. That gets Prince off the field, which is probably a good thing. I think if they can go out and get a veteran that can really play guard for them, that would be a really big deal. Offensive line to me is really not so much about stars as much as it is just avoiding glaring holes.
Yeah,
They just happen to have a few really
five glaring goals.
yeah, they had some big holes up front. So if you can just patch that over and even get average production, I trust Burrow in terms of managing pockets to be able to still play at a high level. Jamar Chase, I have nothing negative to say about him ever again after this season. He had a hell of a year. And they have the complement of weapons around that. You have Joe Mixon still. You have T. Higgins, who's young. You still have C.J. Uzama. You have Tyler Boyd. Like I like their situation. I'll have to look closely at their cap, contracts and all of that before I say something certainly or definitively about them. But they're still positioned well to compete. It's just a matter of the competition, man. Like this was as good as it's going to get with Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert both missing the playoffs and the Bills having to play the Chiefs in order to get into the AFC title game. Like it probably just won't play out like this again. And if Mac Jones takes any kind of step forward, now you're adding him to the mix on top of just what the Patriots are in general in terms of roster talent. So it's a tough road. It's a tough road in the AFC. They'll be in the mix, but it's difficult to say for certain that they have the same kind of roadmap to here that they did in 2021.
My only concern is because I agree with you that like the skill position players are clearly excellent, including
Right.
Burrow and Mixon. Clearly excellent. It's just if the deep passing game, if the yards after catch, broken tackles thing regresses back to because they swung so wildly from 2020 to 2021. Like 2020, couldn't break a tackle to save their fucking lives, and then they couldn't throw a deep ball to save their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people said, "Oh, that's on Joe Burrow's arm strength and blah 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 blah." There was a lot of factors in why they couldn't throw the ball down the field, and it was a historically bad season. And now they flipped it and said, "Okay, we added Jamar Chase, who obviously makes things better because of his individual talent, 100%."
Right.
But they've swung it to, "Oh, we just had a historically great season on the other end of throwing the ball deep and making all these plays and all these catch and runs on short yardage stuff from Jamar Chase and stuff like that." If that regresses to a normal level, then maybe it doesn't. Maybe Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are the two gods that have come back down to earth, and their connection is just will be like this for 15 years. But if it regresses back to an average level, or even just an above average level, have you done enough with the offensive line now?
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's going to be tough because there's a lot of bad players there that you have to switch. And again,
Yeah.
did the Chiefs do it? They basically switched their 5 starters from 2 years ago. Lucas Niang, I guess, had come back in the fold after opting out in 2020, but like they bit 5 new starters and they were good.
Which almost never happens in the
I
NFL.
dare you to find that again somewhere.
Yeah. Like that was like the ultimate confluence of events.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that just does not happen. There's basically no other situation where you turn over your entire offensive line and they're actually good.
Yeah. So that's where I am with the Bengals, where it's like there's a lot of great skill talent there. But like you said, the road to the Super Bowl is always going to be tough in that division, and the offensive line just needs to play better. Like period. Like they just need to get, because if it again, I guess you could have another type of season like this if Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are these two dudes, and T. Higgins is amazing and Boyd is amazing, whatever. But if you're just looking at it statistically, you would imagine it doesn't. I don't look at it statistically. I think these are the two best NFL players that ever lived. So I think they're going to continue to do it like that. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough. If it regresses in any way and the offensive line is still not patched up, then I think we're going to have problems.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, that was Too High Podcast, and we'll catch you guys on the flip side.